there, welcome. Today I'm going to talk about Crazies, both the original and the remake. So we're going to look at both versions of the film. One was made in the mid 70s, and one was made in 2010, 2011, and they're both fun in a way, but the original one's much more serious. But they're both entertaining. But I much prefer the original. The original was made by George Romero, and I'd seen it before actually and enjoyed it, but I watched the projector this time to see it, and it made a bit more impact to see a bigger screen just to see the impact of the images. It's one of those films you should try and see on a big screen, even though it's a low budget film from the 70s, just the atmosphere. Because one thing you miss in TV is atmosphere when it comes to a film. You don't get it really when you are just watching a film. A lot of time you're really missing that. So it is something that's missed. And that's what the remake doesn't really have so much, or the remake's more of a traditional horror sci-fi movie. It doesn't quite have the same punch for me. But I'll explain why as we go on. So the first one made by George Romero in the 70s. He'd done Night of the Living Dead, and he had then did some independent films that had not done well. So he got a producer to put up money. He had this idea of the Crazies, which was a kind of a zombie movie, but not, where it's instead of zombies, it's a biological weapon that's been accidentally released on a small town, and it's like trying to isolate the town while they have to go crazy and not let the thing spread to the rest of America. And that's the whole premise. So it allowed Romero to take the idea of the danger of people in a small town and danger of people trying to control things, but also it could use scientific elements rather than just supernatural, which could create its own problems. I mean, after this, he went on and did Dawn of the Dead right after this, and he went on to do a couple other films pretty quickly after that. So this was the kind of film that kind of brought him back to the genre where we started to get some financing again. But it wasn't that big a hit when it first came out, but I think it developed an audience soon after though. And it was kind of where Romero started to come back to prominence as a director after having one or two films that hadn't done well. Even though he'd done Martin was wonderful. I think Martin came after this one actually, but it was like he'd started to go back to genre a little bit more. This and Martin were kind of his return to genre for films that got some attention. So the Crazies is interesting because it takes the point of view of both the people and the people who are trying to keep them in the town. A lot of the time, your main characters is a fireman, his pal, and a nurse who works for the local doctor. The local doctor is contacted early on after a farm goes on fire. She has to go to work because there's been burn wounds. When she gets there, she finds that there's like army guys there, and they're all in hazmat suits and they all protect themselves. And she's like, what's going on? And she finds out that there's been a biological weapon release and the whole town's in quarantine. The doctor gives her these things that will hold back the infection and says, go, just sneak out, go to your husband, give him this. She gives her a shot, give this to your husband. Hopefully it'll help him as well. And try to get out of town. Just try and get out because this thing can go way out of control quickly. Which it does. So basically what happens after this is the whole town is pretty quarantined. She managed to find her husband and his pal. They get arrested, then they quickly escape and are on the run through the back farms of this town, trying to get to the outside zone to, just basically escape. And that's the film, is that as watching them trying to hide from the army, trying to avoid the army, but also seeing they run into other people who end up travelling with them, and they start to see them get affected by it, and then they start to find the friend get affected by it, and then the wife starts to get affected by it, and it turns out that the husband's actually naturally immune, but everyone else is not. Meanwhile, in the town, you've got the scientists, you've got the army people, and the scientists try to find a cure, and he's like, you never should have brought me here in the first place, because you needed me in a lab where you'd send the samples to me. With a proper lab, I could have found something, but instead you pulled me in here. I don't have proper equipment. And it ends up leading to the idea that if he was in a proper lab, he could have solved the issue. Because there was a cure, which he figures out, but then he gets killed before he can hand it over to anybody. And then there were all these security measures that to protect people, it turns out, slowing everything down and making it worse for everybody in the army and the scientific community, because it blocks people from having communication with each other. They're trying to make sure no one gets information they don't need, but that causes issues. Sort of like in a Michael Crichton book, where the things that are there to protect you end up messing with you, because that's just life. The new smart thing's always the thing that's going to screw you over. That's just the way life is. So the film just takes this atmosphere of what happens when you actually have a biological breakdown. What happens when there's a crisis? It never happens the way you expect it to, and it never happens the way it's been planned. The way it's been planned is everything goes right, and that never happens. People behave weird. People behave irrationally in the best of times, but if they're already affected by something that makes them violent and defensive, they come at you with guns. And you have to shoot them and shoot back at them. And you want people are starting to go crazy as well. You're having to herd these people into various areas, and they're going crazy and they're trying to escape. And you don't have any real faith in your own command structure. You don't have any faith in anybody, really. The more it goes on, and everybody who comes in realizes that they're not getting out, because there's no way to safely bring them back out. Apart from one guy gets out at the end, that's it. One person, and he's been sent to the next town because it's already been infected. So it's like... So even the guy who escaped, the one guy who survives, he's doomed in the next town. And it's a very cynical 70s movie about what we do to ourselves, because it's an American biological thing for other people that has been this, which is been released because of because of a plane crash, and it's been released to this town. So it's their own fault in the first place, and they realise that this thing is much more out of control than they thought, and it's much more dangerous than they anticipated, and it's just like humanity just being so self-destructive. But what's great about the film is Romero still has the kind of documentary feel to it. It's the sense of you're watching these people act without sentimentality. You see people like who are the husband and wife are very happy together, and they're a nice couple, and they're decent people. I see you like them, but you don't treat them they're not treated with any like extra affection for that. Doesn't mean because you like them they're going to survive. You've got Lynn Lowry as one of the people that they travel with them trying to escape, and she's the first one that's affected. She starts to go a little bit insane. And if you know her career, she's also in Shivers, with the Cronenberg film, released from at the same time, where she had a kind of similar part, which is also a creepy film about infection going wrong. So she had a type of film, and it's just the atmosphere of all these characters and how they start to go insane just really lands. Especially you see it on a bigger screen, we can see just the atmosphere of. It's not quite as creepy as Shivers. Shivers is extra creepy because Shivers, the reason for why it's happening is also creepy, never mind what's happening. This one, it's just a biological thing going wrong. It's just the visceral effect of what's happening that causes the problems. Now, the remake was done by Brett Eisner in the 2010. So this was it was developed for a while. There was going to be a remake. George Romero got a credit and they got money, I hope you money. And they were fairly loyal to the film, actually, but they take away one thing that I think it really hurts it. And because in the original, you're in with the army, and you're seeing it from their view. And this one, you're seeing it from the view of the town, which creates some interesting things. But what it does is it makes it just another escape movie from the town, and they try to find out what's going on. And if you've seen the original film, you know what's going on, and even you're watching, paying attention, you know what's going on. And there's a lot of surely to try and find out information that you kind of know, because you're not just told by the army. And the fact that the army are just these faceless guys in this one, and it means you're not tying into the fact they've actually tried to do their best in a bad situation. They didn't create this thing; it was the scientists who created it. And most of the army in the original come in, and it's like they don't have a clue why they were in here. And you get a little bit of that in the remake as well, but there is a sense of there's less of it, so it doesn't feel as creepy as the idea that everybody in this situation is panicking. So the government feels like it's people more like an evil government who's doing things, and it's these plucky good people trying to escape, even though they're going mad, slowly but surely, one after another. And it follows the same beats. Once you get beyond a certain point, it's following similar beats to the original. But before that, the first third, it's like a story of the sheriff played by Timothy Oliphant trying to figure what's going on. He's got a wife played by Radha Mitchell, who's basically two of the top people in the town, and they're your main characters. And they're good actors, and they're giving enjoyable performances. But the first section goes way too fast. It's like it stops a suspense scene you don't need, and then there's other things way too fast. So it's like, well, the pacing's all off. The further it goes on, the pacing gets better as it gets a bit more like much more like A goes to B, goes to C, goes to D. So there's more of a progression that makes sense. Originally, it just feels like the early section is like things happen, and it's not very cohesive. But it's an enjoyable film. It just doesn't feel as original as the original. The original feels that there's a point of view and there's politics involved. This one, it's like stuff's happening. That's it. They're trying to escape. And there's a sense there that, it's a body count movie where that person's going to die, that person's going to die, there's going to be some nice gore effects. But the scary thing, the original, was just the matter of factness of it, not gore effects. They didn't have much money for gore effects in the original. And this one they do, and they have some spectacular moments of that, but it's just like, it's a fun sequence. It's not really scary in any way. It's just, well, that was enjoyable to watch. That was nice. Now what? There's that element to it. And because your lead actors are people you've seen in other films rather than people you'll never see again, it means it's far less more like a studio film, and it feels far more conventional. And it just doesn't have the creep factor that the original had. It's just like, yeah, it's good, but it's forgettable. Where the original was much more memorable. And I watched this one on projector as well, just to be fair. And yeah, this cinematography is okay, but that's it. It's very traditional. There's nothing unique here. So it's enjoyable, but the original is much more of a visceral experience. It's one you remember because of the atmosphere of it and the way the plot slowly gets out of control and how one thing leads to another, and it's like decision after decisions are made. Not all of them are good, and they lead to other tragedies and things that are out of control, and just bits of bad luck. And a lot of people's fate are decided by bad luck a lot of the time in the original. In the remake, it's just conventional Hollywood storytelling, and it's okay. But that's all it is. It's just okay. So I hope you enjoyed this video. That's me for now. I'll be back soon with another one. Bye.